My name's Paul Finch from the Architectural Review. Welcome to this Architectural Review filmed round table, the first that the magazine has carried out. And the project we're looking at is Adelaide Wharf, a housing development in Hackney, East London, completed in 2007, which has won numerous awards, not only for its architecture, but also for its innovative social mix. And I've got a team of people here who made it happen. On my right, Elliot Lipton from First Base, the developer. On my immediate right, Stephen Oates from English Partnerships, who arranged the site purchase, and as we'll hear, were crucial to the inauguration of the whole project. On my immediate left, Simon Alford, architect from Alford Hall, Monaghan Morris. On my far left, the structural engineer, Hanif Kara from Adams Kara Taylor. I'm going to kick off by asking Stephen Oates to put Adelaide Wharf in some sort of context. This was part of a project that English Partnerships were looking at in relation to the provision of affordable and other forms of housing right across London. Tell us something about the background.
Well, the background, the story starts on the London-wide initiative in about 2003. An initial thing was that the whole programme, and it is a programme, and Adelaide Wharf, which is such a fundamental part of it, was part of 16 sites that were purchased by English Partnerships for the London-wide initiative. Now, the London-wide initiative initially started as an answer, or an objective of an answer, for providing additional key worker housing. There was an identification within London that a lot of key workers were trying to get places. It wasn't affordable for them, and they were being lost to all the services needed in London.
So this is people who were earning too much to become council tenants, as it were, but not enough to be able to afford a mortgage at London prices.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So they were providing essential services, and we're talking about people like nurses, fire brigade, police, all those type of people, and school teachers, very importantly, who were really struggling to live in London and therefore were being lost to the capital. So that's how the initiative started, and we were very fortunate to put it through on the base of key worker. But at the same time, it started to look at could we think of ways of delivering housing differently. So it formed from a key worker objective to then becoming more and more of a kind of how can we deliver housing of a kind of mixed tenure process in a different way. And we had the opportunity of a ring-fenced sum of money that come through from CLG of over £200 million to go off and buy some sites in London in a very competitive market, which we succeeded doing over a 2-year period. And also the procurement process was looked at differently. We said what we want to do here is not put these sites ad hoc onto the market and see who comes along and buys them. What we said, we need development partners. We want to look at this as a kind of joint venture approach. And let's get development partners on board. And we had to go through, some would say, the normal European process of going through OJEU to attract those partners. But in the end, we appointed 3 development partners for delivering these 16 sites. And one of those companies was a new innovative company, First Base.
So CLG, Communities and Local Government, was unusual in as much as it provided specific funding outside English Partnerships' normal source of funding, and they presumably were happy with this approach because it was communities-based rather than simply the provision of housing per se.
Yeah, I think that was the difference of why it didn't go through the Housing Corporation, which is a normal kind of national affordable housing programme. They said they wanted to look at something innovative, a different way of delivering housing, and they entrusted EP with that ring-fence sum of money. You're absolutely right, Paul. It's the money outside what EP normally had in its funding rounds. So that was charged to actually spend that money on delivering what was a project, but as much as a project, it was a programme, pan-London.
And how did the Adelaide Wharf site come up? Did it come up as part of a bundled set of sites, or was it all on its own?
Well, we set, obviously, as we do with these things, we set a number of property agents off and seeing what they could buy for us. It was quite a hectic period, and obviously sites, we had a long list, and the list changes, but Adelaide Wharf come up as a really good opportunity. The initial reason that it was attractive to us because it had a form of planning consent in place already, and that was viewed that gave us a fast track into it, and that we thought this could be a really early delivery site because it had the basis of a planning consent already. I think what was interesting that because we could have just gone down the route of what was already there, and I think this is reflecting a lot of our other schemes that we've done, is we decided not to do that. We'd rather take a bit of time and then actually get the right scheme. And I think working with First Base, we started to recognise quite quickly in a joint venture approach that we wanted to evolve something differently here, hence the process of getting a new planning consent for the site.
And just in a sort of general context, was this site about the same on average as other sites you purchased under this initiative? Was it one of the smaller ones? Give us a feel for the range.
It's one of the smaller ones, but one of the most dense ones. That was the key issue with this one, because of its urban environment, its location. It was always going to be one of the smaller locations. We have larger sites. We have sites such as 20 acres, and we have a similar site which First Base are working with us in Southwark. Again, a fairly smallish site. But this was, in terms of scale, it was probably going to be one of the most more denser sites that we were delivering.
And have you been able to devote that same time for design or time for consideration about how you could get the most out of a site just generally across the initiative, or again was Adelaide a bit special?
No, I think generally in nearly all cases we've been able to do that. And I think keenly what happens here is it's the method of delivering these schemes, is because the developer doesn't have to go through the process of trying to pay a huge chunk of money for the land. The land is invested into the scheme, and it's invested against that criteria I was talking to you about, against quality of design. We're looking at mixed tenure. We're looking at sustainability and a lot of other factors that the LWI were buying into. So this, that was a key issue about what we were trying to do. So we worked on it more or less as a kind of joint venture approach.
Now, at the time we're filming this, English Partnerships and the Housing Corporation are about to be merged or under that process as we speak into the new Homes and Communities Agency. Is the London-wide initiative simply carrying on, as it were, under new ownership, or will there be extensions to it?
At the moment it's under new ownership. I think that's the best description of it. But you've got to look at the scale of it, and working with First Base, one of our key partners, and the other two development partners, we've now got, brilliantly, Adelaide Wharf was the first one to get completed. But now we have got over 1,000 units under construction. And out of the 5,000 planned units we expect to put through the LWI, we've got 4,000 of them now consented or a resolution to grant consent. So in a sense, it's been a very successful program. It took quite a time to get it to the point where the developers could really start. But now we've seen a real acceleration of the program over the last 2 to 3 years.
So, I mean, is it fair to say that in some senses Adelaide Wharf was a prototype for this initiative, because it's the first one you got off the ground and you were able to, I mean, in a sense, experiment with the amount of time you gave and the kind of setup you wanted? Yeah,
I think we learn lessons as we go through, but I think the problem is every scheme still is a prototype. Whatever you do, if you look at a scheme in the London Borough Park in Dagenham, or you look in one in Merton, every site has its certain requirements and its certain special cases, and the architects can, Simon can explain that a lot better than I can. But in the sense is that there are key factors that run through it. How we address the London-wide initiative units in the context of Section 106, how we get different buy-in from local authorities, and we'd certainly learnt. But unfortunately, the planning system still in London or within the rest of the country still means a lot of negotiations on an individual basis, which is always a bit sad. And we sometimes have to redesign the wheel on each one, which I'd rather not have happened, but that's the way our planning system works.
And would you say generally that the, in this case, Hackney Council, I would imagine that with a new programme like that, there'll be a certain amount of suspicion from any London borough about somebody coming in with new ideas, claiming to create new communities in a way that implies that in some sense they might have failed. How did you get on with Hackney?
Well, Elliot had that with his team, had a lot more dealings with than Hackney we did as kind of a client-based situation. But I think actually what was really good, that First Base honed in on their fixes. That was the key issue. They identified very quickly with Hackney what their agenda was, and I think everything. Once you can get to that point very quickly, you can then start to blend the agenda to actually work more successfully to a scheme. And they certainly come on board and kind of got much more involved with the thing. And in some ways, in planning terms, And Hackney have a reputation in certain areas. I think this was a very well worked scheme and got planning in a pretty quickly in terms of London planning consent.
Okay, thanks very much. Any quick questions round the table for Stephen from just the point of view of site ownership? Any observations about?
I think it is important just to stress that Hackney were very, very supportive on this site. We actually got our planning application all the way through to a signed Section 106 in under 13 weeks. And I think that really was another example of the partnership approach that was taken. So we, as First Base, went and we sat alongside English Partnerships in all of those discussions with Hackney, and that did facilitate a much more open dialogue about what we were trying to achieve, about how we could all work together to achieve that, and make sure that we ended up with a very successful project that is a marker for how Hackney would like the regeneration of that Haggerston area to go more broadly.
Thank you very much, particularly Stephen Oates. Thank you.